and welcome back to the NWA 1983 project. I'm your host, Lex G, and with me, as always, is Matt Riley. How you doing tonight, Matt?
I'm hydrated.
Okay. So tonight's episode will be the go-home show, Pan Pro Wrestling show that will be taking place next week. So we will see the very best from the NWA from across all territories, kind of a This Week and the NWA type program. A cornucopia of wrestling action, perhaps.
God.
So like I said before, this is the go-home show for All Japan Pro Wrestling. The NWA invades All Japan on our next episode. So on this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the kind of birth of wrestling in Japan, or Ricky Dozon, and so on and so forth. In addition, I had received a couple of questions regarding our last episode that I'd like to answer. So we'll do that as well. But first, spend some time talking about Joey Styles and kind of what happened to him last week. And for those of you who don't know, and if you don't know, you shouldn't really be listening to this program. Joey Styles was let go from Evolve. He'd been working for Evolve for a little bit as a commentator, as a authority figure. So this was Evolve 72. So during a promo segment opposite Stokely Hathaway, who was the manager of the Evolve World Champion, Timothy Thatcher, who Joey's been feuding with to an extent, veered off topic for some reason. And he said that, so basically what he had said, he complimented the ring announcer, Joanna Rose, on her appearance before suggesting that the president-elect might like to grab her by the pussy. He didn't say the whole word. He cut it off for that. At that point, Joey had went back to the back, and he was promptly fired by Gabe Sapolsky, the booker and owner of Evolve Wrestling. So, that being said, he was also let go from Chikara, and I think a third wrestling promotion as well. You know, there's been a lot of talk. There's been a talk of the wrestling world for a few days now, and if you have friends like me who feel that political correctness is ruining the country, and to an extent they do have a point. I think anything left unchecked and is allowed to run rampant could have a negative effect on the country. I don't think this is so much political correctness as it is, you know, Gabe specifically told him, coming off the heels of a hotly contested election, to say nothing political. They were starting on a new streaming network, which I believe is Flow Sports. He obviously has a deal in place, WWE, being a pre-developmental, so to speak, I guess. We constantly see Triple H at their shows. We constantly see William Regal at their shows. And to defend Gabe a little bit here, he's not someone who books controversy. He's never been someone, right, you know, his time in Ring of Honor, his time in Evolve, Dragon Gate USA, he's a disciple of Paul Heyman, but doesn't use the Paul Heyman, you know, if they're talking, it's good type of mindset. So it's not really in his wheelhouse to book anything like that. It's not something he's booked before in the past. I mean, there's been, you know, angles and what have you that get right up to the line, but never really crosses it. He's more known for the bell-to-bell, hot in-ring action, right? That's what, you know, that's what his specialty is. That's his wheelhouse. That's what he's good at. So having a situation like this, I can see where he's coming from. Is like, you know, we have to let you go. And to Joey's credit, he's like, no, Gabe, you have to fire me. Anytime that, you know, your boss tells you not to do something and you go do it, you know, there's going to be consequences and repercussions. I don't think this is America is being solved and millennials in their safe spaces. I don't think it's that, so to speak. I think it's more like, dude, what are you doing? I told you not to say that. What the hell? And I know that Chikara had also let him go. I'm not really sure why Chikara had let him go, because he didn't say it on their show. Quackenbush, you know, says we have a zero tolerance policy for any kind of misogynistic type things and blah, blah, blah. Right. But to that extent, he didn't do it on your show. So are you trying to get away from perceived backlash, where there may or may not be backlash? I don't know what they're doing over the Chikara, but Chikara is super family friendly. Like, they're super duper family friendly. Like, that's something you take your kids to. You know, it's a fun promotion. They don't do anything heavy over there. What was that?
There's wrestling ants.
Yeah, so there's so I can see them, you know, trying to step away from someone who's made a political statement. I don't think he was even trying to make a political statement. I think for him, and everyone knows Joey's political affiliation. I mean, that's wide known at this point. But I don't think it was that at all.
Well, I'll say this. When I was doing comedy shows and hosting them, I used to tell people all the time, you can talk about anything you want. Nothing's off limits. But if you go there, you own it.
Right.
So one time this guy went up, and the audience was pretty mixed that night as far as cultural diversity. So he makes a joke about a wallet being stolen, and then proceeds to shoot a look at the two guys at the table that are black and make a joke about, not wanting to, like, bother them. Some kind of, like, a joke that just bombed.
Right.
Now, a more seasoned professional might just have, not done that, or if they knew the joke bombed, play off the bombing and just move on. He was not one of those things, so he just kept bringing it back up, trying to, like, revive it and, like, redeliver it. And it actually reminded me of a time when I was in a match and the guy screwed up the finish, and I kept trying to call a different finish, and he kept trying to repeat the finish. And I was like, no, it looks stupid. So every time he went off the ropes trying to go for the exact same spot, I bailed out of the ring once, just to, like, cut the momentum, And watching him die on stage was like that. So when I see people do things that they're told, like, I've been to shows where, like, for example, one guy did a show on the Cape, and the host said, no racial jokes that are like N-word or this, like, you mentioned certain words not to say. I don't want you saying certain words like this or that. I went up, did my set, fine and dandy. Guy after went up, yo, man, they don't want us to say shit, fuck, rattles off all this stuff, and it's like, dude, guess who's not getting invited back here? Your ass, And the kid that brought him along that was, like, vouched for him, he got kicked off too. So Johnny Smart Guy thinks he's funny. Now, what I think Joey Styles did here is he tried to play a little bit of a coy thing. Maybe there's something else involved. Maybe there's an angle. Maybe he had to poop really bad, and he's like, I got to get the hell out of here. I got to poop. And that's why I did it. It's like, what were you thinking? And I think he probably regretted the instant it bombed. Like, he thought he'd be clever and, like, a little racy.
Yeah.
And then he clearly knew as soon as he got off camera that it was bad news. And like you said, it was one of those, like, it wasn't even like he said pussy. He couldn't even go there. He was like, he's a bad mother. Shut your mouth. Like.
And I like Joey. I've met Joey in person. One of the sweetest guys I ever met. I don't want to see anyone getting fired, and I think even him getting fired might have been kind of an extreme response. I mean, I could have said something in terms of a suspension or a fine and that kind of stuff to kind of mitigate the damage here. Firing is a little extreme, lack of a better word.
See, what I always think about here is, unless it's part of an angle, let's say he's legit fired. Okay. What's he do now? Like, what's he go to, like, Home Depot and they go, what's your resume? Well, I used to scream, holy shit! Like that. There's a certain amount of, like, does he become like a...
Well, from what I understand, he was doing this part-time, and he has a shoot job.
Okay, so he's a fine job. But to kind of burn your bridges in that field, in a way, and again, whether or not we agree that he should have been fired for it is irrelevant. It's their call, not ours.
Yeah.
Someone told you on site, the booker, the person running the performance, the event, don't do X, Y, or Z. Okay, that's when you say, you're the boss. You're giving me money to do this. I will follow your lead.
Right.
And I've seen, especially in the comedy world, so many guys do that. And from the pro show, the free show I was talking about when I was at Walters, at Killer Kowalski's, he had 3 kind of big rules. And one of the ones was, if we weren't insured for a location, you did not take the match out of the ring. Everything was in ring. You could break out of the ring, take a breather. You could roll out and throw the guy in, but you couldn't do bumps outside the ring. You couldn't do a move out of the ring into the floor. There's no insurance. And he was always thinking his wallet,
Right.
He was also thinking, if we went to a show and they said no blood, you did not bleed unless it was accidental. That was fine. It happened once. A guy's ear got messed up, but, like, that happened. But to blade when you're told not to blade, and I want to say, was it Piper?
Well, we were referring to as WrestleMania 8. So there was 2 instances. So there was the Piper Brett match, and there was the Savage Flair match. Now, during the Piper Bret Hart match, Bret bladed, but he was so good at using the blade that they couldn't figure out where he bladed. So he just played it off as a hard way. So it's like, no, it was a hard way. And they went back to the tape and they couldn't find it. In addition, Ric Flair bladed that same night, but you can literally see him on camera go, and zipper himself. So I think they were fined $50. Him and Savage.
You have to use the alternative bathroom. Sorry, you've lost your privilege.
But they weren't shit canned for that. Obviously, Flair and Savage being in a main event, and Piper and Brett, worked it to the end too, because they got in a they're working the boys in the back, and they got into pull apart in the back too. To get over the shootiness of it, but
to my point about Joey Styles is that, again, it's in a realm I don't care for, like, making the announcers the center points of storylines. The only time it ever worked with McMahon, for me, McMahon in more relevant days, and some of the days in past it worked, but everyone fell in love with it because he did it so well. I don't give a shit about the commentators. You're not getting in the ring. You're not even like a Bobby Heenan type that can talk his ass off, but then follow along, take the bumps he gets at the end of the storyline.
Yeah. There's a payoff for that.
Right.
There's no payoff for this.
Like, for example, right now with Daniel Bryan, I get him and Miz having shit talk to each other, but we're not going to see him in the ring, dude.
No.
Like, I thought this the other day at work, if you could go back and have Miz had that same conversation with someone like Daniel Bryan's type wrestler.
Indie darling, perhaps.
Right, like Samoa Joe.
It'd be a Samoa Joe, Apollo Crews. I mean, half their roster is indie darlings at this point, so There's plenty of guys to pick from.
So have that conversation and say, and then you have that conversation, the two of them. See, I think they should really surrogate that out and, like, have Samoa Joe take up that conversation, or someone who was a real big rival to Daniel Bryan back in the day. Mm-hmm. And then you have the heat. And I think it's that promise of the payoff of the good guy beating the bad guy, so to speak, or even if Miz wins. But you further that storyline. Right now, I give a shit less if Joey Styles says, grab the pussy. Outside of everything else, it's not that funny a joke. It's like a lame, like, dad joke at best. Like, it's your friend's dad, like, oh, you guys going out tonight? Yeah, well, make sure, you can grab the pussy now that Trump's the president. Thanks, Dad. That really just was, you're a horrible person. Like, no one's sitting there saying, wow, yeah.
I do want to talk about the Dawn Marie open letter.
Yeah.
Which is weird to me. Not weird that she made a statement. It's weird that it's coming from her.
Do you want to talk about the Mikey Whipwreck response?
There was a Mikey Whipwreck. I didn't see that. What is that?
No, kidding. Just someone also irrelevant, like, chiming in.
I mean, Dawn Marie, for those of you who don't know, Valet in ECW, Valet in WWE, has been off TV for at least 10 years at this point. What's funny about her response, it's twofold. Number one, it's coming from a woman, but okay, I can deal with that. It's also from a woman who had sued the WWE because she was fired from the WWE for being pregnant. And, she had sued them. She had actually won, and they settled. She didn't win, but the case was settled in 2007. Interesting to me that she would chime in on this. But she did not chime in, or at least it has not been reported that she chimed in on Joey Styles being fired from the WWE for literally saying that the Universal title name was shit and the belt looks stupid.
Yeah.
That's what he was fired for. Now, I can get angry about him saying, like, getting fired from WWE for saying that stuff because I said it too. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that was maybe crossing a line. The WWE, I think, pushed that too far. It really sounds like they were trying to get rid of him, and that was a good way of getting rid of him. If I was Dawn Marie, I'd be more pissed at the WWE for firing Joey for that, knowing what you went through with the WWE for being fired for being pregnant. I think the Evolve situation is extremely different.
Yeah.
And the fact that, he was told not to do something, he did something, he got fired. And then she goes on and insults Gabe and tells him that, he's trying to be Paul Heyman, but he's not Paul Heyman and yada, 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 and all that other nonsense. And, like, my response to that is, like, Gabe never wanted to be Paul Heyman. Mm-hmm. Even if you look at the early Ring of Honor shows, and this is right off the heels of ECW being closed, he didn't use many ECW talent. He used like a Super Crazy and Eddie Guerrero. Were you say no to Eddie Guerrero? No. Right. Or he wasn't bringing in, like, your Sandmans and your Sabus and your Balls Mahoney's and your Danny Dorings. Raven made an appearance there. Tommy Dreamer made an appearance there. So I think he's completely on the other spectrum when it comes to Joey. So calling him, a fake Paul Heyman is not really an insult, because that's not something he was ever trying to be. Applauding for having the balls for him to say that. Oh, okay. What does that have to do with wrestling? I don't understand. That's something you can say on Twitter if you want to, but if you're playing a character on a show and you go off script, I mean, like, come on. I don't understand her thing with this, and not to this, not to disparage Dawn Marie in any way, but she started an organization called Wrestlers Rescue, which was a charitable organization that was going to help wrestlers pay for healthcare issues and for wrestlers in need. Former pro wrestlers Jerry Lynn and Kamala, Kamala's health issues, Jerry Lynn's health issues, said they never received any funds from that charity.
Uh-oh.
So this is allegedly, of course, but are you stealing from the boys? And for example, if Gabe didn't fire him and they're going to pull his TV from him, or he's going to lose his deal, aren't you jeopardizing all the other boys and their paydays? And they'll be working steady for a company? That was at stake here, not I'm going to say something, funny. It's like, if they got kicked off of Flow Sports and had a hard time getting on another streaming media network, and these guys were losing their jobs and not getting paid because Joey Styles went off the rails here for a minute, isn't that selfish too? So why are you going to penalize the boys? The people that you're trying to rescue or protect. It makes no sense to me. So in addition to that, we had an independent promoter who I've never heard of. It was Richard O'Sullivan. He's the co-owner of Chutverks LLC. Apparently he does like Lucha Libre, from what I understand.
I noticed in the article it said his first show, October 12th, so he's not like a veteran guy.
Yeah, so he's a newer promoter apparently, and he's been saying that wrestling has been missing its testicular fortitude, that wrestling doesn't have any balls anymore. Okay. So I don't know what he's going for, but hey, listen, if someone was going to cost you money, you know what I mean? If they're going to cost you money and you're going to lose advertisers and sponsors, wouldn't you be mad too? Wouldn't you fire that guy too? So, I mean, it could be just a money mark with a bunch of money that's going to, run a show and doesn't care if it makes any money.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make any sense. And this wasn't an angle. This wasn't this wasn't an attempt to get heat. At this point, Joey Styles is babyface. At least the last time I seen them, when Evolve was in New York, not too long ago. And clearly, babyface. This wasn't an attempt to get heat. So it's just him saying it just to say it. So it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
And in terms of wrestling losing its balls, I mean, for fuck's sake, this is not ECW, and this is not 1998 no more.
Right.
For a lack of a better word, we've evolved. You know what I mean? So it's like, that shit's not going to work no more. And fuck, ECW didn't even make money. The boys weren't getting paid, and they went out of business because they couldn't sustain that level of Crash TV style, with the swearing, all that kind of stuff. You're only going to get so big. No matter how revolutionary it was, it didn't last very long. Hell, fucking Ring of Honor and TNA has been around longer at this point.
Yeah.
Various degree of success. But, obviously they're not going to have the impact that ECW did. Que sera, I guess. I wish Joey luck. I hope he bounces back. I'd like to see him back in wrestling at some point in the not so distant future. I'm a big Joey Styles fan. He's one of my favorite announcers of all time, clearly. When I met him personally, he's a super nice guy, and I hope that he bounces back. So any final words on this, Matt?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Your boss tells you this, you do that. That's how it works.
So on their last episode, me and Matt, or Matt and I, or myself and Matt, I don't know.
That too.
English is my first language, folks. We talked about what would we do if we had our own wrestling promotions. And one of the questions I was asked after the show that I didn't really think about was I going to use writers? And if I was, how was I going to utilize them? And the answer to that question is yes. I'm going to use them, but not in the way that you think that the WWE may be using them or you think I should be using them. What I would use our Hollywood writers to do was create show Bibles. So you have a character, and your job is to describe this character. So we have continuity. So if I'm booking a show, it's like I'm going to have so and so do this, and they'd be like, no, you can't use that because it's not in his character. At least I have an understanding of where the character is going for at least long term booking. Right. And I don't think writers are necessary to, number one, the right verbiage or the right storylines. Now they can always contribute ideas, but there's this narrative out there that wrestling is like soap operas. What the fuck are you talking about? Wrestling is like soap operas. I've seen soap operas. I've seen wrestling. They're literally nothing alike. The only thing that's the same about pro wrestling and soap operas is that soap operas are on every day and they go from show to show. And wrestling, there's no season finale. There's just more shows afterwards. In terms of professional wrestling is not like a soap opera, at least in my opinion. It's like an action movie. Full of testosterone, big explosions. It has a story. It could be kind of light from time, but action, 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 and then there's always a reason why the action occurs. Like Commando. The bad guys kidnap Alyssa Milano, and Arnold Schwarzenegger has to come in and save the day and whoops everyone's ass.
Story of steam, Bennett.
Yes. And that is the story of Commando. So anything that stories are better than others, some action movies have better stories than others. The melodrama is like, in terms of professional wrestling, it's like, even to use that term is ridiculous to me. There is drama in professional wrestling, like there's drama in any other action movie, any kind of sports movie. That's what it is. It's not like, it always goes back to me, the moment that I almost shut off the TV and like I'm never going to watch wrestling ever again, is when was Stephanie McMahon and Triple H were feuding over custody of their dog. I was like, fuck that shit. That's when you go too far, and that's when it's stupid.
Dog, man.
Fur babies, right?
I would say I'll see you that and raise you a Mark Henry's son being a fist.
Yes.
A young giving birth to a fist.
It's funny because when you look back, it's funny at the very least. It probably in poor taste, but at least it has a shocking comedic value there. And some of the more the more soap opera elements of WWE can be a little bit grating from time to time. Like, oh, there's drama between Stephanie McMahon and Mick Foley. Let's see how this unfolds. Kind of bullshit. It's like, I just want to see you got two guys in the ring fighting. I mean, come on. Like, I don't need all this other nonsense. But there's always going to be a story because you need a reason why, right? Not a reason why they're wrestling, but a reason why they hate each other. It's like my wife says, it's like, why do they need a reason to wrestle? They're wrestlers. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, yeah, I think what always comes up is what happens all the time. Why am I watching these two guys get in the ring and wrestle? Now, if it's part of a tournament or rankings, I think that's what's really missing from the company, too, is a ranking system. We didn't mention that, but I was thinking about that later. Like, we should have talked about, I've always felt that if you had a top 5 ranking or, like, people have an understanding that so-and-so beats so-and-so, they have a shot to move up or a shot at the champion. It makes that match, that's not even a title match, more meaningful.
They used to do that. Gorilla and Jesse used to do that shit all the time. Oh, the winner of this match can see the title shot in the future, and the loser of this match can, not be in the title hunt for a very long time. Or like, hey, they're wrestling for the winner side of the money. That kind of stuff. Like, because randomly you have two boxers fighting, like they're obviously fighting for money, and wrestlers, and at least in kayfabe terms, are fighting for money. It's I would assume. But also they want to move up in the rankings. They want a title shot, and that goes back to making your championships more important. These guys are wrestling for an opportunity down the road to become a champion and make more money and become a millionaire. Like like Bobby Heenan says, if you win the world title, you're automatically a millionaire. Those elements that are missing in professional wrestling because we've gotten too cute, too snarky, and a little too smart markish for ourselves.
Well, Larry, let's look at, we talked about like Miz, right? The thing with Daniel Bryan. What happened to that post show? That got changed or just bumped back?
It's still there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a Raw one now too.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, because the Raw was like so the kind of reaction they were getting, and it's like, oh, we're gonna have a Raw one too, and no one gives a shit about the Raw one.
It brings up a good point because I think one thing, and it's one of those things that really is missing for a lot of the competitive side of it, is why do I care about you? Why are you here? Well, I'm the best. Are you? What makes you the best? You know, what drives you? Are you jealous of the other guy getting a push that you're not getting? That used to be one of the greatest things. Why did Sean turn on Marty? He was tired of carrying him. He wanted to be a star on his own.
Yep.
You know, that motivated him to make the transition.
Why did Hogan turn on Savage? And I say Hogan turned on Savage because Hogan's the one who's the heel in that program. But the reason why Macho was mad at Hogan because of all of his hot dogging and grandstanding.
Mm-hmm.
He was always coming out to my matches, getting involved. It's like, I don't need you. I'm the world champ.
Right.
Why are you trying to lust after Elizabeth? That's the greatest angle they've ever done. Period. I don't care about you. You can keep your McMahon and Austin. I'll take my Randy and Hogan.
Hot take. Hot take.
Your build is beautiful. Best constructed angle of all time. And it worked on like 1,000 different levels. Because if you're a Macho fan, you can definitely see like, man, this Hogan guy's a jerk. He's always coming out interfering in Macho's matches. Now he's going after his girl. Like, what a joke. What a. And if you're a Hogan fan, you're like, Savage is crazy. What's wrong with him? And he's paranoid. So that's, to this day, is the greatest angle they ever done in wrestling, period. So, other than Kaufman and Lawler, which is amazing.
Andy Kaufman.
It's amazing. Guys, if you've never seen that, go back and watch that. It's amazing.
Yeah, one of David Letterman.
Yeah. They sold that shit. They kayfabed the fuck out of him. And wrestlers were banned on David Letterman for like a bunch of years after that. I guess until like Hogan got huge. So it's like, it's completely ridiculous. So what I would use for Hollywood writers, again, I would use them in different capacities instead of actually writing storylines. And, you know, the question to my booking committee, you know, and I would have a couple guys, is like, I want this match in the ring at our big show. So say our big show, lack of a better term, Starrcade. Our big show is Starrcade. I want AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe. All right, guys, how do you get me there?
Right.
Because I want the best matches on the show.
Right. And you know, it's funny, we talked about how SmackDown's done a much better job building towards their matches.
Unless you watched this week's.
Right. Like, they made, I like the Miz match, but that's me. Yeah. But the Miz versus Dean versus Dolph. It went from a few to, okay, I'll watch this. And they do a better job packaging. And this last show was kind of, whatever, but it was also the Survivor Series prep show. And
it was a Survivor Series Go Home show. It was a 900 show, so you had more legends coming back from the past to not put over the young guys. Thank you, Booker T.
Right. What I will say, though, is this. People always talk about, well, shouldn't there be brand loyalty? Fans,
Yeah, maybe in 5 years. Not 5 months.
Here's what you do to build it quickly. You take the fans. You have them go online and register as Team SmackDown or Team Raw, right?
Nice. I love it already.
Here's what happens next. Everyone who's registered is automatically entered into a contest to win tickets to WrestleMania, but only if your team wins. Now do you have the best team who wins? You damn right you do, because now you're sitting there going, whoa, I picked Team SmackDown. They're down 3 members to 1. There are only 1 left. AJ Styles pull it off. And if he pulls it off, somebody who's a Team SmackDown fan gets a ticket to WrestleMania. You put them in front row. You put them smack dab center. So you make that a big thing. So every year at Survivor Series, maybe you make it like a couple of winners, right? So you have, and here we go. Here's the G family, and they're very happy to be first. They won the tickets because they picked Team SmackDown.
And we're wearing SmackDown shirts.
Right, they're all in blue. And then you have the Raw wrestlers come out and look at them and like shake their heads, Maybe one of Shane comes out and shakes their hand, whatever. But it's a way to promote, because I've read articles before about this, and they've always said no one gives a shit about Raw versus SmackDown because you don't put anything in our hands as fans to give a shit about it.
Right.
Give us something on it. Have it be that events like Survivor Series build up to a fact, or let's make it more like Royal Rumbles. That's the next pay-per-view, right? The next big one. So that's what you build to. Win tickets to Royal Rumble. And here's another thing. If Royal Rumble is a cross-brand event, which I don't know if they would do 2 Royal Rumbles or probably just do 1.
They do 1, yeah.
So you make it that, again, if you're on Team SmackDown and Team SmackDown wrestler wins the Rumble, somebody's winning tickets to WrestleMania. WrestleMania, the Battle Royal for Andre the Giant. If it's a Team Raw wrestler, Someone wins tickets to Survivor Series, SummerSlam. You know,
SummerSlam.
you keep building it. You know, then you make a match at SummerSlam that's fans vote. Two guys go head to head. One SmackDown, one Raw. Whoever wins that match, the fans of that group win tickets to the next big event, and you keep it going. And that way, so, like, it's always perpetuating. Go ahead and hire me, guys. You know, these ideas are free right now, but you can get more.
That's brilliant, by the way. That's brilliant. Awesome.
Oh. But that's I always think about these things. Like, when it comes to, like, people get, like, you know, Joey Styles gets fired. If this is part of an angle and you play the parts brilliantly, fantastic. But where's the payoff? Is Joey getting the ring? Is Joey gonna, like, become like McMahon, become a figurehead wrestler / manager? Okay, fine. You know, maybe he's crossed the line, whatever it is. Something.
It's tough. You can't bump him, though. Yeah, I don't think he's never taken a bump.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. I always call it the Gary Hart bump.
Yeah.
Gary Hart took the worst bumps of all time. He always looked like a fan who got pulled out of the audience and made to take a bump.
He's no Bobby Heenan.
No, Bobby Heenan was great. He just got killed. Like, oh my God, Bobby's dead.
Broke his neck in the process, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who was it that put the leash around and almost broke his neck?
What was that?
They put a belt around his neck and whipped him across the ring and yanked him. Was it Patera?
It could be Patera, yeah.
Because I remember I thought he legit broke his neck. I was like, holy shit. Oh my God, he's dead.
That's when Patera was huge. Everyone, like, knows Patera as, like, the guy you saw at SummerSlam 88 or the guy you saw at WrestleMania 4. It's like, look at Patera 1980. He's, like, one of the biggest motherfuckers on the planet. Like, legit world's strongest man.
Yeah.
Before, I don't know what happened to him after he came back from prison.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. Not jail.
But you mentioned world's strongest man, and I'll always fondly think of Mark Henry as the world's strongest man. If only because of one of my favorite, you talk about favorite moments, angles, was when he turned on John Cena. Oh my God, that was so well done. Because again, they brought us in, they made us care. These guys are retiring. You wanted to, you know, bury the hatchet with his old rival. Well done, sir. I tip my cap, if I had a cap, to thee.
I wear a cap. It's old school Ring of Honor cap, by the way, guys. So, circa 2004. That's the way I roll.
There you go.
So we'll talk about some Japanese professional wrestling and kind of the beginnings of Japanese professional wrestling. The first Japanese, I guess, wrestler or person to get involved in catch wrestling, which is the modern day equivalent to professional wrestling, was sumo wrestler Togachi Masuda, and that was in the early like 1900s. There were attempts before World War II to kind of popularize Japan, and there were attempts before World War II to popularize professional wrestling in Japan. Those had all failed.
Mm-hmm.
But after World War II, Korean-born Riki Dozan, who was a former sumo wrestler as well, started professionally wrestling, and he was trained by our good friend Oddjob. Maybe you know Oddjob from James Bond. I love him, by the way. And he was in a ton of, big famous actor, that kind of stuff, and professional wrestler. So he was super important in training Riki Dozan. And then Riki, Dozan had given up sumo by 1950. He claimed it was for financial reasons, but I don't know kind of how it works in Japan, but there seems to be like some sort of discrimination between Japanese people and Korean people. So he's Korean, so he had a hard time kind of making his way through sumo, probably getting held back. So, he tried his hand in professional wrestling instead. So his wrestling debut was in 1951. He had a 10-minute draw against Bobby Braun. So the way they worked it is that once he started getting a little popular, they would start bringing in American wrestlers for him to beat. And it made him huge in Japan. Remember, Japan had just lost the war. They're trying to recover, economically and mentally as well from losing the war and literally having atomic bombs dropped on them. So when they brought Americans over to Japan, they were all villains. They're all bad guys, big ugly Americans, and they always cheated. But Riki Dozan got his first kind of worldwide exposures when he defeated Lou Thesz for the NWA International Heavyweight Championship on August 27, 1958 in Japan. To Lou Thesz's credit, he agreed to put it with Riki Dozan, and it really sparked wrestling in Japan. That was so huge. They're the godfathers of wrestling in Japan, and Lou Thesz is still highly regarded in Japan as an all-time legend, just like he is in the States. Riki Dozan went on to captured several NWA championships, both in Japan and overseas. And then he started training, students. So his, I guess his two most famous students are wrestling legends Antonio Inoki and the Giant Baba. And by the way, Matt, could you figure out what his finishing maneuver was?
Giant Baba?
No, Ricky Dozan.
Oh, oh God. Not the Atom Bomb.
Japanese wrestler in the 50s.
Oh my God. In the 50s?
Yeah.
Some kind of atomic drop?
Close. It was a karate chop.
Oh God.
There you go.
Karate chop.
Yeah.
Oh, the Overgy Steamboat.
I think it was more like the Andre one. Kind of like, yeah. Bless his heart. Super successful in Japan as pro wrestling. He starts acquiring properties like nightclubs, hotels, condominiums, and started owning boxing promotions. And he started JWA, which is Japanese first, real wrestling promotion in 1953. His first big feud in JWA was against Masahiko Kimura, who was a famous judo player. He had been invited to compete by Ricky Dozan in professional wrestling. And then, again, like I said, he fought Thez. He fought Freddie Blassie, the Destroyer, which I think is Dick Beyer, this version of the Destroyer. Yep. And then he had, in 1957, he had a 60-minute draw with Lou Thesz for the NWA Championship, which drew an 87 rating in Japan.
87?
87 rating.
Wow.
Yeah. He had a 60-minute 2 out of 3 falls match with the Destroyer through a 67 rating. So this guy was over.
Yeah.
Again, he became wealthy. Nightclubs, condominiums, box promotions. He's living a good life until December 8th, 1963. While partying in a Tokyo nightclub, Ricky Dozan was stabbed with a urine-soaked blade by a man named Katsuji Murata, who was reportedly and allegedly part of the Yakuza.
And actually the first invader. Sorry, that's a really deep callback joke. Sorry.
Too soon.
Oh. Sorry. Not sorry.
His sons, along with Giant Baba, founded All Japan Pro Wrestling. And his other student, Antonio Inoki, founded New Japan Pro Wrestling. And there you go. That's how how there's two wrestling promotions in Japan, which is relatively small country compared to like the United States. But these promotions have been going on, for a very long time at this point, and there's no signs of them slowing down. And it's an interesting thing. You talk about like Inoki and Baba. I was watching the first Tiger Mask cartoon or anime, if you want to be a jerk about it.
Yeah.
And it features Baba. Clearly, Baba is the big star, but it clearly has Antonio Inoki as the number 2 star. And it's funny to see them together, like even in a cartoon. It was really like weird, and there's Jack Briscoe in there. Jack Briscoe and fucking Baron Cicluna is in the fucking cartoon. So there's a new Tiger Mask cartoon that we will be reviewing at some point. Brand new anime, 2016 version. I love Tiger Mask, by the way.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's an orphan. That was the heel, and turned him back babyface. So, again, you had like the Tiger Mask and like El Santo, right? Like they're very, very similar. And when we do our EMML show, we'll talk about El Santo, Blue Demon, and we'll talk about El Santo, Blue Demon, Paraguayo, Mil Mascaras. Mil Mascaras, he sells like Road Warrior Hawk. Not at all that means. Shit. It's like you don't put a belt on him ever. He never sells. So going back to the first Tiger Mask cartoon, it was 1969 through 1971, and I watched I guess the first 15 episodes that I could find, and it was really cool. I also watched the newer series too, just to kind of get a favorite reference. And the newer series are really good, and it has some alluding. It kind of alludes to a WWE as the evil wrestling corporation with the evil woman, evil large-chested woman as the kind of main villain of the show. So,
nice.
So again, if you don't like subtitles, don't watch it. I don't know what to tell you. It's not in English. It's fucking Japanese. But it has subtitles. So. Doesn't change anything, though. It still makes it just as good. So, Matt, what's your thoughts on the birth of professional wrestling in Japan and Ricky Dozan?
I actually read about a lot of this a while back because I was a nerd, at one time, and I was just like, "Oh, Japanese wrestling."
You were a nerd. Come on.
Well,
I don't believe it.
More nerdy. So, anyways, I actually, when I was working on the NWA wrestling game there, the Management Wrestling Association, and we were doing a project where there was like different organizations back in the 80s, and I was doing international ones, so I looked up international wrestling and looked at Mexico, Europe, Japan, and Ricky Dizan and looked at the history. Man, urine-soaked blade. Ugh.
You die. That's it. You're just dead.
Yeah.
There's no comeback. There's no comeback. You can't Hulk up from that.
So what if you just piss all over guns or your urine-soaked bullets?
I don't know if they kind of... Because when they fly through the air, I think they dry up.
What if you really get a piss, though? There's a lot of piss in there,
Piss and vinegar.
Just piss on people as you run around. Cut them and piss on them. Hey, there you go. Some piss.
Or maybe if you stab someone with a syringe full of piss, maybe they just dry up. I don't know. Maybe people have cleaner piss than others. I don't know.
My God. It's a urine-soaked vial on top of a pole match.
Okay, Vince Russo.
Yeah, why not?
Judy Bagwell on the pole. My favorite match of all time.
Yes.
They had a Viagra on the pole match, too. It was ridiculous. Pinata on the pole. He liked the pole thing.
He's a fan of the pole, apparently.
Yeah, that's what he says.
No, I enjoy Japanese wrestling, if only for some of the reactions of the fans are always entertaining to me. The history-wise, I think, you go to the Stan Hansen years and Bruiser Brody years and even Abdullah Butcher years. And I've always loved the fans. They're so into it. It's such a great connection.
They're still super into it, too.
Right, so it's fun. And I think that's impressive because, you think of this country and how, audiences in the North versus audiences in the South are really hardcore audiences. You watch a Raw, in a New York audience, versus the, Des Moines.
We love our fans in Des Moines, by the way.
I don't. And I have nothing wrong with Des Moines. I almost drove to Des Moines once. How's that? And I was supposed to drive to Des Moines, and one of the biggest nor'easters ever to hit the Northeast, and that didn't happen. Who knows how my life would have been different if I made that trip.
I don't know.
So screw you, Des Moines. But I'm going to really pick a city or a country every week to just mock them.
If America needed an animal, we're going to put the nozzle right here in Des Moines, Iowa.
He's a Terry Funk. I'm going to go hunting. You're all pigs.
He should never made it out of Puerto Rico.
You know what's funny? I work with a guy who looks a lot like Terry Funk. It's almost astonishingly like Terry Funk.
I had a 10-minute conversation with Terry Funk about how Bob Backlund is crazy.
Really?
Yeah, and he was the only one talking. Alice, that Bob Backlund, he's crazy. I don't know what's wrong with him. That's shoot. I'm sitting there because it's Terry Funk. What am I supposed to say?
I have a friend who's a huge Bob Backlund fan.
Why?
He's known him personally for
Well, that doesn't count.
He just was always a big fan of his, even when he was a little kid. He writes to him every so often, and yeah. So
do you understand the appeal of Bob Backlund in the 70s? Because I sure as hell don't.
Well, I don't think anyone did, but that's my own take. But I think
he's literally a cracker without any salt on it, the saltine without you take a cracker, and I've ate one once, and I've never ate it ever again. I ate the saltine that had no salt on it, and it was gross. And that's Bob Backlund. There's no salt.
Wow. So Bob Backlund loves Des Moines, so screw him. That's right. A new feature. We trash one wrestler in one city-state each week.
Iron Sheik's, I think, said that on Twitter the other day. But, so remember, most of you should know this. Vince Sr. would go around and pick whoever his new champion was, right? So we go to other promoters and see, hey, who do you got? And he was looking for the All-American boy. That's what he wanted, his next big star to be. The All-American boy, that's his big idea.
Yeah.
You're coming off of Bruno, you're coming off of Pedro, you're coming off of Superstar. He wants a clean-cut All-American boy. So he goes down to Florida. That's where Backlund's wrestling at the time. He goes to Eddie Graham. He's like, I need the All-American boy. Who do you got? He's like, I have Bob Backlund, but I think you should use Steve Kern. His dad is a war hero, all that kind of good stuff. You should use, Steve Kern is better on the microphone. You should use Steve Kern. And Vince is like, I'm taking Bob Backlund. So, so it could have been Steve Kern with like that 6-year title run instead of Bob Backlund. They had to protect. I mean, I love. All kidding aside, I do like Bob Backlund. I think he's a cool guy. I love his, especially like when he went crazy and shit. That was awesome. But they had to do a lot of things to protect him when I was champ. Like they would constantly have to still book. They still had to book Bruno on those shows to make sure that he would draw. They still had to bring other guys from other territories to make sure that he would draw. He had wrestled fucking Harley Race a bunch of times when NWA versus WWF champion to kind of make sure that they kept relevant with Backlund there. And both Bruno says that Backlund couldn't draw, Superstar says Backlund couldn't draw, and subsequently Hogan said that Backlund couldn't draw as champion. But they still like, oh no, he's our guy. So he's just kind of reminds me of Roman Reigns. So he's our guy. We're going with him regardless. You don't want to see him? Screw you. He's the champ. But in Backlund's defense, I will defend Backlund here. I watched a Backlund versus Hogan match from 1980 this morning. Fucking Backlund got a hell of a reaction. He was over.
Yeah. So
the people that were there, I don't know how much he drew, but the people who were there were excited to see Bobby. So, it's good stuff. And that's one thing that I enjoy about doing this show, because I'm not someone who considers themselves like, I know everything about wrestling, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I know a little bit. I know enough to have a show, but I don't know everything. So recently, I stumbled upon a program for Starrcade 83. It was like a little, it just ran down the card. And on the page was Hulk Hogan and Wahoo McDaniel versus Dick Slater and Bob Orton on Starrcade 83. I'm looking, and I'm looking. I'm like, that can't be. That's like fake. That's not real. And I look into it, and holy shit, Hulk Hogan, about 5 weeks prior to debuting, about 8 weeks to winning the WWF Championship, was supposed to be on the very first Starrcade. So I quickly kind of like, all right. And I was talking to you at the time. I was like, I got to find out more about this shit. So I'm like, let me tweet Dave Meltzer and see if he knows anything about this. And Dave never responded to any of my questions that I ever sent him. But he did respond to this one. And apparently it's true. Hulk Hogan was booked on the first Starrcade, along with Wahoo McDaniel to fight on Dirty Dick Slater and Cowboy Bob Orton. Unfortunately, he was double booked in Japan and went to Japan instead of going to Starrcade 83. And the ramifications of all this, with Hogan being on that show, and the fact that no one's ever really talked about this. I watched, there's DVDs, documentaries that just talk about Starrcade. They never once mentioned that. And as a wrestling fan, I'm like, don't you think that's important to talk about? That Hulk Hogan was supposed to be on the show, but he wasn't on the show, and why he wasn't there? And what that could have meant to Crockett and kind of, he's going off to New York. But maybe they could have convinced him not to go to New York. There's a lot of different ramifications here of Hogan making an appearance at Starrcade. And a prominent feud, too. I mean, from what I understand, they didn't even mention they found out pretty quick that he wasn't going to be available, and they pulled it, and then they replaced him with Mark Youngblood instead. But it's like holy shit, like, okay. And then I asked him another question. You're 2 for 2, Dave. I saw a video of Hulk Hogan, August 1983, wrestling in St. Louis. That's weird to me. It's like Hulk Hogan was in the NWA at that point. He did some stuff in Georgia earlier. It was Memphis. That's for time. And look, what's he doing in St. Louis? So I asked Dave. I'm like, Dave was like, I saw a video of Hogan in St. Louis in August 1983. Was Vern booking him out to other territories, like to kind of get him in like a national spotlight before he was going to put the belt on him, or something like that? And he's like, no, Vern Gagne owned a piece of St. Louis at the time. It's like Vern Gagne owned a piece of NWA territory at the time when he's AWA. I was like, what? So that being said, in terms of the game, the NWA 1983 project, technically I could use all AWA guys now and St. Louis. So when I have events from the Kiel Oratorium, I can bring in Vern Gagne. I can bring in Vern Gagne, Greg Gagne, Jerry Blackwell, Hogan, Ventura, Baron Ravashki, Dick the Bruiser, Ray Stevens. Is he alive in '83? I think so. Well, anyway. But technically, I could use those guys if Vern owns a piece of, St. Louis. And it goes back to my point. We mentioned this in like, what the hell went wrong with the NWA?
Yep.
How are you going to allow Vern Gagne, it's a rival promotion, to own a piece of your... And St. Louis was the home base of the NWA, for a time. How are you going to allow Vern Gagne to own a piece of that? He could have just easily I'm going to buy out the rest of Sam Musnick, and I'm going to make this an AWA territory, and the NWA loses St. Louis.
Right.
It's like, just bad stuff. It's like Vince buying Georgia. It's not any different than Vince buying Georgia. Fuck, dude. It's like, bad job. NWA, bad job. Shame on you. That shouldn't have happened. So, again, it goes back to, I don't try to fool myself I know a lot about wrestling. It's like, there's days like that, it's like, I think I know stuff. I don't know dick. I don't know anything. And that's kind of the fun, when you're going back and doing the 1983 project like we're doing. And it's like, all right, let's see some stuff I've never seen before. Let's try to find things I've never heard about before. And that's sort of the fun. It's like, okay, I'm trying to educating myself more in the process of doing the show than I would, not doing the show, obviously. So it's like, yeah, that's the fun part. I'm still looking for more information on Los Angeles territory. I saw a DVD on Amazon I'm probably going to buy. And when we go back to Los Angeles, I'll probably be better prepared. But yeah, it's like, the power of YouTube and the power of the internet and the power of hey, this is pretty cool. And, seeing... I watched the video. You ever seen the video of Hulk Hogan's debut in Memphis?
No.
Oh my god! So they have Brutus Beefcake out there, but he was Eddie Boulder at the time. So picture Brutus Beefcake, gassed out to the gills, right?
Okay.
With a crappy porn mustache, with long blonde hair.
Okay.
All right, and he's putting over the Hulk. The Hulk is coming. So they did this video. And it's homoerotic, perhaps? I don't know if that's even the right word. Weird. It made me uncomfortable with my sexuality, I think. I don't know what's going on. It's a lot of different emotions going on there.
Was it worse than Rocky 3 when they're running along the water?
No, because that's badass. Me and my friends do that shit all the time. That's what's, being a friend is all about, I think. Yeah, it's a little homoerotic. But, I'm going to show you this video because you have to see it. It's ridiculous.
Oh, no.
And it's it's 1979. I don't know what's going on. I don't feel good about myself no more. Now, obviously, just go past the part where it's Brutus Beefcake.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I told you. 70s was a rough time. You want to go 10 seconds in.
Oh, boy.
And if anyone haven't seen the Hulk Hogan's debut in Memphis, it's weird.
He's just sitting there flexing in the light, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Terry Boulder.
That's right. And I like how they obviously when you build wrestlers, you might throw a couple inches on their height, a couple of pounds onto their weight. They're like, Hulk Hogan, the incredible Hulk Hogan. He's 6'8", 340 pounds. That motherfucker ain't no 340 pounds. It's ridiculous. Yeah. 62 inch chest, 34-inch waist.
The pythons.
24 inches. Actually, they said it was 26 inches. By the time 85 came around, I guess they shrunk down to 24. 12-inch fists. It's like, that's weird, man. That's uncomfortable to watch. We are officially out of time. So catch us on the next NWA 1983 project when we talk about All Japan Pro Wrestling and Giant Baba. And was he a good worker? I'm not even sure. But we'll find out. So for Matt...